Rendering in Revit. Rendering refers to creating photorealistic views from your project. To do this, we'll take images or JPEGs of actual materials and apply them or map them to the surfaces of our project. That combined with specific lighting, and then we render it using a rendering engine to trace rays of light and create a photorealistic view. Let's take a look. As you can see, I've already set up a project of a small little building with a topo surface and a roof with an overhang and a wall. The first thing we'll want to do is place our model in the world and at a certain time so we can get the shadows the way we want them. We've looked at that before, but to review really quickly, we'll go to the sun icon at the bottom, go to sun settings, and you'll want to select the still button, and this way we can place our model in the world where we want it. So we'll go to this button and we'll change here to San Diego. And that'll get us close enough. We'll hit OK, and then we'll want to change the date and the time. We'll go ahead and put it in the summertime so we have some good strong shadows, doesn't matter when, and maybe around 2 in the afternoon, 3. And we'll hit OK. Now we don't see any difference here until we turn on the shadows, and now we have some shadows. And that's fine. That's how you place the material. Place the building in the world where it should be. You know, I'm going to change those shadows. I don't like them so much there. And you can go through this, and I don't like that either. Let's go in the morning time and see if that's any better. That's a little better. Okay. The next thing you'll want to do after placing your model where it belongs is to get the materials correct. So let's go ahead and take a look at this wall first. I'm going to turn the shadows off just so we can see it a little bit more clearly right now. If we highlight the wall, we can go to Edit Type in our Properties palette, and we can modify the wall here. We go to the Structure. Here we'll want to look at each of the materials that are visible in our view. So we'll start with the brick, and if you click on this radio button, you get to the material browser, and this is where you can change how the brick pattern of your model will look. You see 3 different categories here in the Graphics tab. This is for our shading, so this is the color of our shading. This is the surface pattern, brick, and then the cut pattern when you actually cut a wall when you're looking at it in a section or a floor plan view. So we're not interested in this when we're going to render. But we are interested in the, well, let me back up. Actually, none of this is for rendering. This is for a shaded view like we've been looking at back here. To change what the material is going to look like when we render this view, we'll want to go to the Appearance tab. When we click on this, this is what we'll get when we render it. So instead of just a pattern with a color, we actually get an image, in this case a brick image, that Revit will use to render it. So it'll look like this instead of just lines indicating brick. And we can change this if we want by clicking on this file. And you can pick anything you want here. Again, these are JPEGs. You could even scan in a picture, take a picture or scan in something to use as an image for your material. And again, these qualities are associated with this material over here. So if you have a black brick and a white brick and a red brick, you would need to create 3 new materials over here. You can right click and duplicate, and then change the JPEG that you use for those types of bricks. So that looks good. The next one is the concrete masonry. We'll go to Appearance. That looks good. And so that's all we'll see are those two materials. So we're good here. The roof is just a straight material. So I don't think a material is applied to it yet. So let's highlight the roof, go to its type, go to its structure, and we'll look at the asphalt shingle material. Go to the appearance tab, and it looks like an asphalt shingle. And so that might work. Let's see, it's going to look like that. We could look for something else. Let's type in roof and see if there's a better material we could look at. There's not too much here. How about wood shake? Oh, that looks better. Let's use the wood shake. What I did there was, when I typed in roof, I didn't find anything up in the project library. So I went down into the additional libraries and I found wood shake. Now you have to push the material up into your project library from here. And so I used this button here and I pushed it up to the project library, and now I'm able to use it. So now I've applied the wood shake material to my roof. When I hit OK, now it's wood shake, and I'll hit OK, and I'll hit OK. Now nothing changed here because this is the shaded view. Again, the shaded view is totally independent from the rendering view. So if I highlight that roof again, I could even come into my structure, go to my wood shake roof, and I could change the surface pattern to anything. I could change it to concrete. I'm going to change the color because they're the same here. Make the concrete, let's say blue, so you can really see it. And now you have a concrete roof. But if I rendered this, it would actually look like wood shake. So remember, the shaded view is independent of the rendering view. If you come down to the visual style here, you can actually get to a realistic view. And this is a quick view of what it might look like when it renders. When it renders, it'll be a better quality, but this gives you a very fast indication of what it might look like. And you can see that in the rendering view, the wood shake looks like wood shake, but in the shaded view, it's back to the concrete. Now, of course, concrete doesn't make sense for a roof, but I'm just showing the difference between the shaded view and the rendering view. So those are the materials. The next thing would be lighting. We're going to do an exterior view right now. So lighting, we'll just use the sun, and that's fine. We might want to put some trees and some people or cars in this scene. So we'll do that really quickly. We'll go to the massing site tab and we'll do a site component, and we'll just place some trees here, maybe some over here, just to make some interest in our view. I'll go ahead and add in some more components. When you render, you spend a lot of time, here's our US Imperial Library. When rendering, you bring in a lot of components that are in the Entourage folder here. And so we can put in a car, little beetle. Again, it doesn't look like much in shaded view, but it'll look better when it's rendered. I'm typing in CM to load a component, and maybe we'll bring in a person, and we'll place them underneath. Okay, now, so we've got the scene set up. We put the building where we want it in the world. We might want to turn our shadows back on. We've put some trees and some entourage in there, and we have it in the daytime and the summer. So we have a perspective that we've created earlier. And I'm actually going to back up so we can see some of the trees. I'm going to use my walk button and turn it over here. Those trees look a little far away. So let's go back to our 3D view. Grab some of these trees. And we'll bring them closer. And let's see if we can see them now. So we see just a little bit. I think that looks good. So now we have a scene that we can render. To render, we'll go to the little teacup down here. Teapot, excuse me. And this is our rendering dialog box. There's several settings we need to look at. At the top, we can render a region, this red box. What this allows us to do is just render just a portion of our scene. And that's because when you render, it can take quite a bit of time. And so by doing this, we can take just a piece of the scene, render it, and see if it's all looking the way we want it to look. And if it is, then we'll render the entire scene. The quality of the rendering, everywhere from draft to best or custom. And so again, if you want to do the entire scene, you can do draft and it'll be quicker, and you get it'll be not nearly as high a quality. And so you can see if it's looking the way you want to, and then start spending some more time by doing best or medium. Output settings, screen. If you do a printer, you'll need to know, we won't get into that in this video, but you'll need to know what kind of DPI you want, depending on the size of the print you're going to print. But a screen, it doesn't matter, so we'll keep it on screen. And then lighting. You have different options for lighting. If it's an exterior scene or an interior scene, and if you want sun or sun plus lighting that you've placed in the model. For here, we haven't placed any lights in it, so we'll keep it as the sun only. And then you can pick the background, the sky. You can add clouds or no clouds. You can make it very cloudy. You can actually just change the color of the sky, or you can even add an image to the background. Let's see how we could do that. We type on image. Then you can go to image here and import a JPEG of a sky. Or you could even take a picture of the property where you're going to place your building and put that in the background. So I'll go ahead and select image. I'm going to go to my desktop. I downloaded a picture of a sky earlier just from the internet that I got, so I'll use that. And it looks like that. We'll see how that looks. We're going to stretch it to the size of the view. And so we'll add that. And so now our rendering is ready to go. So let's first not do a region, we'll do a draft of the entire scene. And it's going to think for a while. And it did that fairly quickly. It's a little bit dark, but you can see the image of the sky behind and the wood shake, and you can see that it's not so clear, and that's because of the draft view. So now we could do a region, and maybe we'll just take a little corner over here. And when I do a region, I try to get a good amount of the materials in one small square. The smaller the square, the faster it'll go. But here I can get the brick wall, the roof, the person, and the grass and the car. And we'll go ahead and put this, we can just do a medium. We'll take a look at that. And it's looking pretty good. You can see that the car came in, the sky in the background, the wood shake. Maybe we'll even do it at best and see how that does. And you can see that now that it's finished, it's a much higher quality and it's starting to look like a real photo. So that's an exterior rendering scene. I'm not going to do the entire thing because it'll take a really long time. So let's move into the interior. For the interior, I'm going to go ahead and go to level 1. And I've placed, you can see I've placed a desk. That's a lamp. Here, let's look at it in 3D here, and I can hide that roof. And you can see the desk and a lamp. And the lamp will actually have a light to it and a chair. Let's go ahead and add some more interior lights and see how that might affect the rendering. The load families. Now I'm going to go back to my Imperial Library and go down to lighting, architectural, internal, and maybe we'll get a sconce and put that on the wall. It's a little low. Elevation, let's say 5 feet. And I'll create another one over in this corner. And put that up at 5 feet. The other thing this model does not have in it yet is a ceiling plan, or a ceiling I should say. So let's quickly put in a ceiling. We'll go to Architecture tab, Ceiling, and we'll just pick in a 2x4 grid. And then we'll need to create a new view. So again, we'll go to our View, 3D View, Camera, and we'll just go from this corner over to here. And I've placed the windows so we can hopefully see the background and the sunlight coming in the windows. The sconces will add light. The desk lamp will have light. On interior views especially, lighting is very important. In fact, we should put some lights up in the ceiling. So let's go to our ceiling plan. We'll add some more lights. We need to load them, and we're going to look for a Troffer 2x4. And these are these lights you see in almost every commercial building. I'm going to move that to be precise, right at that intersection. And then I can copy this. Multiple times. We're not going to do the whole ceiling, but we just want to brighten up that corner a little bit. So now we can go back to our interior perspective, and now you can see that there's lights in the ceiling, lights on the walls, lights on the desk, and maybe we'll do one last thing and bring in a person. Back to our Entourage folder. There it is. And we'll bring her in. One of these, when you bring in a person, if you highlight that person, you can pick different ones, and I always forget. One is sitting, I forget which ones they are, but let's go back and, oops, not that one. There's our perspective. Looks like she's standing there, so that's fine, we'll just keep her there. And if we go to rendering or realistic view, that's what she looks like. That's good. She's got a roll of drawings, looks like. So she's an architect. She's waiting for someone to come in for a meeting. So that's our scene. I'm going to go back to consistent colors. Probably pick a material for the wall. I think that's just going to be a blank wall. So I'm going to highlight the wall, go to its properties, go to its structure, and this time I'm going to go to the finish on the inside, the gypsum board. And if I go to the appearance of that tab, there's nothing here. If we go to the image, let's see if we can find a good image here. Thumbnail. And you know what I like to use? Usually the gypboard doesn't have much of a texture to it, so I try to find the stucco. Let's see. And so here it's not stucco, it's actually plaster. If you hover over these thumbnails, you can get a description. You can see that it says plaster stucco, and it's gray. Here's a plasto, trowel, light, yellow. We can go ahead and pick that one. That's fine. Hopefully that has enough surface texture to it. You can kind of see it there. If you double click this, you can see that it's just got a bit of bump there to give you the texture. And hopefully we'll be able to pick that up in the rendering. So we'll say okay. You know, one thing you can do with that material also is once you pick the image you want to use, if you go back to the graphics tab, this is the shading. This is what's going to show up in the shading. You can just click this use render appearance and it'll try to match the color for that. Again, there's no surface pattern, but it does try to match the color. You know, we could put some texture on it, and that's for the shading. And now you can see that that's what the walls are going to look like. Hopefully it'll look better in the rendering than it does here. And then the last thing is a floor. Let's put a floor in real quick. I did not pick the right floor, so let's, there it is. So it's just a generic floor, but maybe we want ceramic tile. And if we go to our interior perspective, I'm going to highlight that floor. And let's go ahead to see its structure, the tile mosaic gray and the appearance. It's going to look like that. So we'll see what that looks like. Okay. And again, the The floor doesn't show any difference because of the shading, but if we go to our realistic view, you can kind of see it's very faint, but you can see it. So hopefully the rendering will make it look a little bit better. So now we go to our teapot again, rendering. This time we'll do medium, and the difference here again is the lighting. So the scheme is not just exterior. We want an interior. We'll want to see the sun from the outside and the artificial on the inside. And I'm actually going to do a draft view real quick and render this and see if it's too bright in here. The draft is good to get a sense of how much light is in your scene, and if you need. So it's pretty bright, but I think it's going to look okay. You can see the tile has some reflection in it. We'll wait here while it renders. And if you zoom in, you can actually see the light on the table coming, or the desk coming from the lamp. And so that's our scene. So you can see all the interior lights lit up. Outside, the sun is very bright. So we could change the sun setting. Let's try that. So if it's too bright outside, you could either turn the sun off, or I'm going to go ahead and go back to still. Oh, and it looks like it wasn't on our setting that we wanted. So now might be a little darker because we just changed that to being morning light. So we'll go back to our teapot, render this one again, and let's see if that changed the rendering much. Still looks pretty bright outside. So I'm going to go ahead and stop that. And you can see how you can work back and forth until you get it just so you want it, and then render it at a higher quality because it'll take a long time. So let's go back to our sun settings and change this to even earlier, maybe 8 o'clock. You can see how the shading got a little darker. So hopefully the rendering will do the same thing. And I'm really looking at the windows. It's still pretty bright out there. One thing that might help that, I'm going to stop this real quick, is we also, I'm going to load that image again. And that was on the desktop in my Revit folder. And there's the image. And maybe hopefully we'll see that image through the windows. So let's render it. Let's see how this looks. And now you can see the sky through the windows, and that's much better. There's not much color in this rendering view. And if you had a specific carpet that you found somewhere, or you have at home, you could take a picture of that carpet and use that image and load that image as your material for your floor. And you can get a realistic view of the actual material you want to use. But that's how you render it. And so once you set up the scene and it looks good draft, then I would go ahead and render it best. And it would take a while. Be prepared to sit around or go get a cup of tea or a coffee and come back later and you'll get a good rendering. Once you have your rendering done, then you'll work with these options down here to capture the rendering in your project or to export it as a JPEG. Now, it's important, don't hit show the model or close out of here because you'll lose your rendering, and especially if you sat there for several hours, you don't want to do it. So be warned, as soon as the rendering's done, I always export it, so I have a JPEG that I have as an extra file. And if you want, you can save it to the project as well. So first, let's look at, if you save it to the project, it'll just ask for a name, and we can name this rendering interior. And you can place that on a sheet if you want and use it in that manner. Or you can export it and create a JPEG. And we'll just call this 3D view interior. And I'm just going to place this in the folder that my sky was. And so here's the folder that I put it in. And if you click on it, and here's a JPEG. You can email it to someone. You can bring it into Photoshop and do more to it, put a title on it, change it however you want. And one thing I wanted to show you before you export it or save it to a project, you can also adjust the exposure, and this is nice. You can change some of the settings of the rendering without having to re-render the entire thing. And you can play with these, and you can see how that affects it. You probably don't want to do that. But you have highlights and shadows, and you can change it however you want. You know, if you wanted to make it a little bit darker, give it a little ambiance, you know, the highlights. So you can play with this and make it look however you want. Even the color can change. So I recommend playing with that until you get it exactly the way you want it, and then you have a rendering that you're happy with.